Welcome again to Klaviyo Live. It's great to have all you here. My name is Barack. I'm on the business development team here at Klaviyo. In this Klaviyo Live track session, we are going to go over leveling up your email design. So please help me welcome one of our members here, Mitch, who's on the account executive team, and Julie, who is a senior product designer.
Hey guys, thanks so much for coming. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you for coming today. So just kind of show of hands, who here is a designer? Ooh, we got a few of you guys in here. That's awesome. Well, who thinks that the emails that you design should be on brand with your business? Okay, hopefully a lot of you guys, which I see, yeah. So yeah, we do too, and we think that your emails that you design should be on brand with your business, but maybe you've struggled in the past designing those emails. So you've come to the right place. So my name is Julie Langaro. I'm a senior product designer here. What that means is I work on the product and engineering team. I help design the next big features that come out in Klaviyo. And my primary focus is really the customer's perspective in mind, all of you guys in this room.
My name is Mitch. I'm an account executive here at Klaviyo. I'm often the first point of contact for a lot of customers that are joining Klaviyo. And oftentimes as a part of that, email templates is a huge thing. So helping migrate templates, get all that kind of stuff set up within Klaviyo, and do the revamp there. So super excited to walk through a lot of this stuff with you all here today.
Yeah, so our goal for you today is to walk away from this feeling really confident in designing some great looking emails, in addition to emails that convert really well. So we'll be going through some examples of top performing e-commerce emails, and then Mitch is going to actually show you how to take that into practice, designing one of those emails in our Klaviyo template editor. So I'm a designer, like I said. I think about design all day. So I have some pretty strong opinions when it comes to design. But I'm also pretty knowledgeable about best practices when it comes to laying out your emails. So I'm going to walk you through some elements of 6 e-commerce emails, and I'm going to explain to you why they work really well. They're really, really good design, but also they're really high performing. So let's get started. So this is Howell Brothers. This is their welcome email. So they do some great things. First of all, they're a company that sells men's passion for the outdoors. So they're opening their email. They're basically saying, welcome to our family. This is what we're about. Our focus is on the outdoors. And they're highlighting all of that up at the front and center above the fold. It's a bold headline. And they really explain about why they have a passion for the outdoors, and you should join the family as well. They also have this bold call to action front and center. It's orange, and as you can see, all the other call to actions are a little more subdued. They did this on purpose, obviously, because they really want their customers to engage with that initial heed the call, which is also very on brand with what they offer. They make a bold statement with photography. They use a lot of photography here, which really works for their brand. Just something to note about photography, if you're not able to get some really nice high-res photos, there's a lot of stock photography websites online that's free. One of them that comes to mind is called Unsplash, and it's a great resource for you. The next one is Warby Parker. This is their abandoned cart email. I'm wearing them today. They're an eyeglass prescription company. I'm a huge fan. They have a great brand, and they do a really great job with having that brand across their website into their emails. So this email is a 1-column layout. It really focuses on the headline, description text, some imagery, and then a call to action. It's very simple, short, and sweet. So something great that they did was they really focused on optimizing this email for mobile. So at the top header, you can see that there are 4 categories. But on the mobile side, you can kind of see it, not quite, but anyways, they've streamlined it down to 3 links, And one of those links is locations, which isn't on their website email. So basically, they're appealing to their audience that's opening their email on their device, obviously. We're all reading emails on our device all the time. So basically, maybe a customer opens, or recipient opens this email, and they're like, oh, this is cool. I did look at these glasses. Let me see if there's a location nearby. I think that's really great. They also have a cool way to incentivize their purchasing behavior. So they do like a fun little illustration, like free shipping, free returns within their brand. And then at the bottom, they're like, got any questions? Need a little nudge? Here's a phone number to call us. And then they use a lot of white space. I'm a huge fan of white space. I use a lot of white space in my designs in the products, but also other things that I design. And it really breaks up all of the elements within the email and kind of focuses on what you're reading. So I think they do a really great job with that. So Brooklinen is a luxury bedding company. This is their browse abandonment email. So they do a fun thing. They have a catchy theme and tone with this. If you're familiar with Craigslist missed connections, they're basically saying, hey, we saw that you looked at our bedding online and maybe it's a missed connection. Come check it out. So they're kind of applying that. The recipient it's a missed connection with the recipient. So it's a playful tone, and it really works for the brand. They didn't go too crazy with it. And they kind of followed it through the whole email, from the headline to the text to the bold call to action. It says reply, like you're online or something. And then you can't quite see it here, but their incentive to purchase is kind of blocked out in this background, which kind of separates that from the rest of the elements on the page, and it works really well. Another cool thing that they did that I really like is they use these cute little icons at the bottom to contact them, live chat, email, call us. And I thought that was just a fun way to make this even more creative and fun. And it really worked well with the messaging that they're trying to get across here. So Indochino, not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly, they have suits for the modern man. And they are appealing to maybe people who have purchased in the past but maybe haven't purchased in a while. So this is kind of they're highlighting a sale that they're having. And they use large imagery at the top. They're showing their product on someone. And then they're using a cool way of adding typography overlaying on top of that, and it really works. As you can see, they're using two different types of typefaces, and it's an interesting layout, but it works. They're saying 3 days only, and then there's the price at the bottom. Next, they're just very clear and simple with the rest of their copy on that email. Just a little bit about the suit that's on sale, and then a call to action with a discount code. I think it's a nice layout. And then always a best practice, something that you can try out is a similar products at the bottom. So maybe if they're not crazy about that suit up at the top, they can click through and see what other products they have. And here's a customer thank you from Loopy. Loopy sells phone cases that have a fun little loop on the case. A lot of Klaviyos have them actually. And they are sending a thank you with a plain text email. So it's a very personalized messaging that they have. They're using a dynamic tag. They're personalizing the initial, hey JT, thank you so much for purchasing this case. And they're basically saying in the messaging, like, if you have any stories or something fun you want to share with us, then we're here to listen. Also in the signature, they say stay loopy, which is kind of just their thing, I guess. And then they keep it still on brand by just doing a nice touch of including the logo at the top and then a picture of the team at the bottom. Now, something to note about plain text, maybe you're not sure if you want to use plain text or not. I would say think about the messaging that you want to use, and when I'm designing, I always kind of go to pen and paper first, kind of figure out like what your messaging is, what kind of content that you have, and see if plain text works better than more visual emails. And then this is the last one from Outdoor Voices. This is their product update. Outdoor Voices is an outdoor fitness apparel company. So this is highlighting, obviously, there's interaction within this email. And they're doing a great job of combining, wow, you can't see that really at all. But there is text there. The contrast is just really bad. But they used, I'll try and explain it, they used the color scheme from that picture into the typography that they're kind of overlaying on top. This is definitely like a graphic that you would have to, design initially and then put it in the email. But it really works, and then the rest of the email, they're just very simple with it. It's black text, black call to action, very straightforward. And then GIFs are really cool. They're a fun way to kind of have the recipient focus on what they're receiving. I would suggest using it sparingly and be careful because sometimes they can get really big. So hopefully now you have some fun ideas and some tools to take with you on designing your next really great looking email. And I'm going to hand it over to Mitch now to talk about actually designing one of these in the Klaviyo template editor.
All right, so now getting down to brass tacks, right? So we walked through what are some really great examples of these emails. How do we do this within Klaviyo? So we're now going to walk through the process of building out a template within Klaviyo. And so one that I really liked was the Warby Parker one that Julie had mentioned as part of her piece here. So we're going to start to walk through how do we take this concept here and implement it in something like the Klaviyo template editor. So in order to build a template within Klaviyo, we can do that in a couple different places. We can do it in the email template section. We can go create a template directly from in there. We can also create emails directly within flows as well. So there's a couple different places we can access the template editor. But in order to create my first template, I can come in here. For example, I'll see the different themes. Klaviyo does have a template library that you can run through. So if you wanted to use one of the pre-built templates, kind of hijack that and make it into your own branding, you can absolutely do that. Or you can start with a basic template here and recreate from your own. So how do we go from this initial email here into this Warby Parker email that we've created within Klaviyo? Now, a couple things. We want to start here with the template editor, and there's a couple things that I want to highlight as part of the general template editor as a start. So you'll notice here, this is the block section. This is where we're going to drag and drop in the different elements of the email. And the second piece I want to highlight is what we call the style section. Does anyone here code in CSS? Not that you should be able to, just curious. All right, cool. So within CSS, there's a concept of a style sheet, right? And in that style sheet is where we're going to keep all of our overarching properties about that email. What's the font? What are the colors? What's the different heading sizes that I should be building out? So this style section within Klaviyo is that style sheet. And this is where we're going to put together and build out all the different global pieces of the email as I build that out. So if we take a look at that style sheet and a little bit more specifics here for this email that we're going to build out, you'll notice here there's a couple things, and I realize this is pretty faint, but if we take a look up top, we can change the background color. Now, when you first log into Klaviyo and you create a new template from scratch, it's typically a gray background. In this case, we want to change that to white, right? Just makes it a nice, cleaner look. We can go ahead and do that in the style sheet, changes the overall template. We can choose the template font, right? So what's the normal font that we want to use, standardized across the template itself. Also getting into link colors. So when I do build a link, what does that look like? And then building out each individual heading. This just makes it a lot easier in the future. If you do this to start, it makes it a lot easier so you're not styling individual pieces of the template editor moving forward. You can just refer back to this style sheet. I'll show you what I mean here in a minute, but that's what this is here. Another part of this style sheet is getting into the mobile settings. And so part of the reason that I wanted to build out this email here is it optimizes really well for mobile. How many of your customers, how many of you, or majority of your customers view your emails on mobile? Right, so most of you in the room here, almost every account that I talk to, most people look at it on mobile. I know I do. So it's really important that we want to optimize our emails for mobile. So this is where we get the option to run through and say, how do I want this email to show up? Spacing, sizing. Do I want to change my font look and feel for my mobile piece as well? So you'll notice that here. That's also part of this global style sheet. So next piece we're going to start with is if we go to the template editor itself and we've changed the styling. Now this looks a little bit different than the first one, not significantly, but now the background's white. The font is now going to be Times New Roman because we've changed that in the style sheet. So we kind of have a starting place here that we want to work with. First piece of an email is going to be that logo and header bar. That's kind of the first part of the email. This is something that's really important for the brand. One thing that I always tell a lot of my prospective customers of Klaviyo is you want to keep this consistent across your emails. You want someone to be able to look at your email, look at that logo and header bar, and without even reading it and reading your logo, they know it's you, right? If you can do that between a comment header and a footer, then automatically that person starts to register that I know I'm getting an email from your brand in particular. It just increases that brand loyalty and really starts to get people more engaged. So if we want to do this in Klaviyo, we do have a bar, a drag and drop option here for the link bar. So what we want to do is we want to drag that in and we want to choose the particular option that we want to use. And there's a couple different options within Klaviyo. I can do the logo stacked on top of the links. I can do it on the side of the links. I can just do the links. So we're choosing the options here that's going to best fit the layout that I want to do. So you notice here we drag that in. But when we do that, it's pretty basic, right? You can put in your logo and you start to put in the individual links that you have. You can link all this out. And in the editor, you'll do all of the editing on this left-hand pane, right? So this is where you're going to put in your options. You'll add buttons and so on and so forth. Will all happen there. But as we can see, this block doesn't look great, right? It's got a black background. The type doesn't look quite right. So this kind of gets into the next layer of styling within the email template editor. And that's going to be with the block styles. So you guys will notice over here on the very left-hand side, you'll see options for block and then block styles. This is where we can then start to go customize in individual blocks. If you think about it on a hierarchy, that style sheet is global settings for the template. Block style is how I then style like an individual piece of the template. And then inline styling is actually like right within a text editor. That's where you would bold specific text. Maybe you want to bold a word, or you want to change the color, italicize something. So this is where we can start to get into that and start to really build this out. So we're going to want to change the background color. We're going to change the font to match the font that we had set before for this particular block. We can also set padding in here, right? Do I want more or less space above the logo, below the logo? So you can start to craft that and format it the way you want. So this is what it'll look like here after we've styled it. We can see what that looks like. And again, we want to use a common header footer across your emails. Klaviyo makes this super easy. We can do what's called a saved block within Klaviyo's template editor. How many of you have used a saved block in Klaviyo's template editor? Who's like first time hearing about this? Anybody? All right, cool. I won't go too much into it. But now you can keep this, drag it across your emails. Makes it super easy to do that. So an interesting piece about the Warby Parker email that Juliet highlighted here is how do I then show a different link bar for those that are viewing on desktop and those that are viewing on mobile? We want to change the way that's going to look and feel, because if we put men's eyeglasses, men's sunglasses, women's eyeglasses, and women's sunglasses, that's going to take up a ton of space on a mobile phone. So we want to shorten that. We want to condense it. So what we can do is we can actually create a different block within Klaviyo's template editor, and you can switch between a desktop and a mobile view with a toggle on the top right. And you'll see in this block, in the block style section, you'll notice a mobile block. And this is where you can choose what particular devices do I want to show this particular block on. So in this case here, what we did is we created a second block that you can show just on mobile and a block that shows just on desktop. This way, when someone's looking on the mobile, they'll see this shorter option here with the men's, the women's, and locations. And when someone's viewing on desktop, they're going to see the other options as well. So if we're getting into the second part of this email is where we're getting into the actual text. This is where we're going to style through the text block in Klaviyo. And this is where it gets really important to set up that style sheet in the beginning, where we can use those headers, use the common global fonts. So you'll notice here, what starts out as just saying want a better look. And because we've set our style sheet the right way, you'll notice up here, we can now change it to heading number 1. Okay, this is how I want all my heading number 1s to look across all my emails. So with a click of a button, I can change it this way. The reason we want to do it this way is then if in the future you want to change the way heading 1 looks, you can just go to the style sheet, change that, and then we'll update everything on the flow instead of you then having to go in and update each individual piece of the flow. Does that make sense? Cool. So that's super easy. Once you have that all set up, you can just drag that stuff in. And then the second piece we want to focus on here is just getting imagery into the email itself. Now, I want to preface, this is an abandoned cart email. And within Klaviyo, we will pull dynamic data from the abandoned cart. I'm not going to go over that here in this session. We do have a whole session on dynamic data and how to use that. I believe it's happening at 3:30 today. So I'm just going to cover from styling options and things like that. But if you did want to use something like that, again, look at the dynamic data. But for right now, we're going to cover the image itself. Within Klaviyo, we'll drag in that image block here, and you'll be able to choose from your image library. You can choose to upload this. You can also just drag and drop images directly into the template as well. And then this is where we want to get in and style that particular image. So you'll notice when we drop these glasses in, they're huge. They take up the whole email. I can just set the image width on this to a certain pixel size, and that starts to now increase and decrease the size of this particular image here. I may also want to reduce the padding on the right or left side of the email if I feel like the image is kind of wide or I want to shrink it a little bit. That's where I can get into the padding of the block itself. And again, with a pre-built like abandoned carts within Klaviyo, so if you sign up for your Klaviyo account or you choose a browse ideas option for an abandoned cart, this is what the dynamic data will look like. This will just pull the product image from a checkout started event, for example, pull the product title, so on and so forth. Again, I'm not going to dive too much into this today, but just so you guys know, in this case of an abandoned cart, this can all be dynamic. Now, as we get into the button, this is the main call to action on this page. So in this case, we're just going to drop a button directly into Klaviyo. And this is where we want to get in and style this. So we can get in and style the button in a couple different ways. We can change the shape. So there's something called border radius on this. So we see this border style section. I can choose the pixel, right? Do I want a rounded button? Do I want a square button? What fits best on brand for you? We can change that here. We can also get in and change the coloring, the text, and the format, and the font, and everything like that. And then we're going to want to change the links behind that. Nice part about Klaviyo, again, you can use dynamic information as links if you want to. So if you do have the cart URLs, for example, in an abandoned cart, I would put that dynamic link in the back. When that email sends, we'll recall that dynamic link for that person. So when they click on that, they go right back to their cart. But if it's a general button, maybe I'm promoting a particular category of products, a collection, a particular item, I can just link right back to that on the button. In terms of breaking up the page, in terms of like this horizontal rule on the bottom does a nice job of saying, okay, the main content of this email is ending here. So now I want a way to break up this particular email. And so all we can do is we can just drag and drop that in. This is mostly changing padding on this, so I can choose how thick do I want this line to look, what colors do I want it to look, how wide do I want it to be. So you'll notice we're changing the padding to shrink it because I do want a nice streamlined look. I don't want that line to go all the way to the edge if the rest of the email isn't going all the way to the edge there. But as Julie mentioned, white space can be super powerful. And sometimes when you're building out different elements of the Klaviyo editor, you feel like stuff just gets super condensed. So what we can do is we can drag and drop in a spacer bar directly in here and just add some white space to this email. Again, it's one thing I really like about this email is it's spread out. Each element is kind of highlighted in its own right. And the white space is doing a really good job of doing that. Now, once we've put this email together, this is how it's going to look at the end, right? Pretty darn close to what we were looking at before. How are we going to preview this within the editor? We can do this directly in the preview section where we can now click. And we'll have an option to look at how this email is going to look within Klaviyo. I can preview this directly within the Klaviyo editor. I can also send myself an email to different inboxes, to different email addresses, so I can test how this is going to look across different inbox providers, so on and so forth. But how do I personalize it? So now that we've got this relatively generic looking abandoned cart, it's going to pull in the dynamic data. But Klaviyo tracks a whole bunch of information, right? So we have all this other information about our customers. How can we pull that in? So say, for example, I wanted to say, hey, Mitch, want to get a better look at these, right? I can add in just dynamic fields within Klaviyo that's going to reference personal information about people that you've collected on those profiles. So you notice there's these two options here, right? We have insert tag and insert property. A property is going to pull any information from the particular profile, and it's going to insert that into the email depending on who the recipient is. So a good example is first name, right? I want to reference and say, hey, Mitch, this is your email, right? Come back and get this stuff. If you're tracking other properties, maybe you're tracking someone's favorite color, right? Hey, Mitch, I know your favorite color is orange. My favorite color is orange, by the way. I'm a rare crowd, I feel like. You could say something like that, and then that makes this just feel a little bit more personal for me. So you can start to incorporate that data into the different text blocks here that exist within the platform to personalize that experience that someone goes through. Now, there's a couple pieces of the editor that I want to highlight. We're in the e-commerce world. We want to sell more products and help grow our businesses. Klaviyo makes that really easy to do some dynamic product recommendations within the Klaviyo template editor. So you'll notice there's this product block within the editor here. There's a couple different options with this product block. We can choose to populate from a feed, and we can set up those feeds within Klaviyo to pull from your whole product collection. You can pull from like individual pieces and parts of your catalog to make sure you're showing the right things to the right people. And we can start to personalize this as well. And you'll also notice you can choose to select from the catalog. So maybe you're liquidating a few items that you have some extra inventory of and you want to promote those ones specifically. I can go directly into my product catalog, insert those into the email, and fire that out. Now, when we do this, sometimes I know I do this all the time. I'll build an email in a flow. And I'm like, I love that email. That's great. I want to use it again. We can always save these as templates within Klaviyo. So for example, if we go into the flow builder, we can click into one of the emails in particular, and you'll find yourself on this screen that probably looks pretty familiar. This is where you're going to edit the subject line, the from address, so on and so forth. On this option here, we can choose to save this email as a template so that I can then reuse it in the future. Maybe I really liked my header and my footer. I liked the look and feel, and I don't want to have to go rebuild this every single time. I can just swap out the content in between. So that's a super easy way to do that. And then if I want to implement this in the future, all I have to do, say I'm building out a new flow, implementing a new email. When I'm building out this new template, I can just configure. I'll choose this Use Template option on the far right. And now it's going to give me a list of my templates. I'll go to that My Templates tab on the top right. This is where I can choose and insert that email accordingly. So now that we've put this together, now we can know how to use it and go on from there. So I'm going to open it up to questions here. Appreciate your time, and I guess what do you guys got at this point? Cool. Got a question there?
There were a couple of examples on text overlay on image,
Mm-hmm.
but can you actually do that in Klaviyo, or how do you recommend going about that?
Yeah, so unfortunately we can't do text overlay on images directly within the template editor. So the best way to do that would be to maybe do that in like a Photoshop prior, pull that into Klaviyo as an image block, and then you would just link behind that. Yep.
The nav bar,
Yep.
mobile versus desktop. So when you're building it, it's defaults to the desktop version.
Yep.
So then you're customizing it the desktop version, right?
Yep.
That block. So then when you switch to mobile, you're just customizing the mobile.
Yeah, so I'll show you if it lets me in this. Yeah, so basically you can do it a couple different ways, right? So you can choose the way I built this here. So this is the email here. You'll notice that there's this block here that's only going to show up on desktop. So if we go into the block styles of this, you'll notice this is showing only on desktop. And then if we switch over to the template section here, it should be showing another block that has the mobile piece as well. So I could
Just customize that on the mobile side.
Yep. And then you could have two blocks. You could say one only shows on desktop, one only shows on mobile, and then that way it shrinks accordingly. Yep. Question in here?
One of the issues we have is that sometimes we might have multiple images and they're all slightly different sizes.
Mhm.
Is there a good way to normalize that inside the editor?
Yeah, so you can edit images right within the editor if you want to. So for example, if I wanted to click on this image here, I can go to edit this image, and then I can choose to resize it. So if you have a particular sizing option that you want to keep it to, you can just come in here and resize that image to match. Say you're looking 200 by 200 for each. Question in the back? Yeah.
Yeah, every now and then we'll do kind of more responsive design where the desktop image and the mobile image are a little different.
Yep.
When the client gets that email, is it going to download both versions of the image, or is it like the little country?
That's a great question. I'm actually not sure of the answer to that one. I believe it should, depending on what device they're opening on, it shouldn't load the other image. But I can get some more information on that, and anyone that wants some more info, happy to track that down. Question?
What's the mobile breakpoint for design?
What do you mean by the mobile breakpoint?
Like it says 7 pixels wide. Like when does it break mobile from regular?
Yeah, so I believe if you flip to like landscape on your phone, that will flip to a desktop view, and then if you flip to a portrait mode, that will flip over to the desktop. In terms of the actual pixel count, Sammy, do you know by chance?
But is it using a query to know that you're actually looking at it on a phone, or is it based on a certain pixel?
I believe it's based on the pixel way.
The other question is that, can you edit the HTML directly?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, so in any text block within Klaviyo, you can also access the source code. So say, for example, you want to custom code a header title, for example. I can click on here. You'll notice this source button. That's going to take me right into the code itself, so you can go ahead and edit that.
The entire HTML?
Yes, you can. Yep, so on the template itself.
Is the styling all inline, or is it using the style sheet?
It depends on how you structure it. I mean, the best way to do it is with the style sheet and then edit inline accordingly to specific pieces of the template. That's the way that we recommend to do it, is with that style sheet.
Does Gmail not take style sheets? Does it only allow for inline styling? I don't know.
It's a good question. Do you know, Sammy, do you know more about that? Nikita does. Nikita is one of our engineers. Say that again?
It ends up applying all the styles inline.
It applies them all inline. Okay, cool. There's a question in the back.
Similar to what you were saying, so if I'm doing overlays an image, so that's
Yep.
more heavy image emails, do I have to recreate the images for mobile and desktop so that they're different? And if so, like, can you hide an image and put it like the mobile thing?
Yeah, so you could choose to hide an image, again, with that, like, choosing what device you want to show it on. So I probably would create different images for mobile and desktop in that case if you wanted them to show up differently with like different breakpoints in the wording, for example. But yeah, you would just do that in the block style section. You would choose, you'd have like essentially like 2 blocks, and you'd say this one's only going to show up when I'm viewing on desktop, this one's only going to show up when I'm viewing on mobile.
Okay. And Crystal, in terms of the top menu bar,
Yep.
I know how to hide them, but in terms of, you have one of the Warby Parker model, like horizontally.
Yep.
But on mobile, it always like goes vertically.
Yeah, so that's a setting within Klaviyo if we want. So again, this is just getting into mobile optimization. So sometimes, for example, like if I was to take this and shrink it, it's going to get really clunky and it's going to be really hard to shrink. So typically mobile optimization means that they're either going to stack or you can choose to not show them. But we can change that setting if we want to. So if we wanted to come in here and come to block styles, I can choose how I want this to show up on mobile. So right now it defaults to stack. If I wanted to show it inline here, I can stack the logo. I can do it inline, or I could just show the link and buttons only if I wanted to. If you just didn't want it to show up at all, you would do that right in this, choose what you want to show it on. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Other questions? Yep.
This might just be like a really specific issue that I've had.
Okay.
When I started, so my company was already using Klaviyo when I started there.
Mhm.
So they had kind of an existing template, and I've changed it quite a bit since I've been there. But
Mhm.
one thing, for some reason, even though like I've changed the styles, I don't know. I'm wondering after going through this today whether I should just start from scratch and see if it works out. But I've changed the styles of buttons.
Okay.
But they render fine on desktop.
Mhm.
They render like Times New Roman on mobile consistently, and I don't.
Interesting.
know why.
Okay.
And I have it set as to home line. It just like drives me crazy. So
That's-
I've been using images as buttons, which I know is a no-no.
Okay.
So that's like just a weird frustration of mine. I don't know if you had an experience with that, or if you had a thought of how to troubleshoot it.
Yeah, I would probably look at the hierarchy of the styling. So again, it can get a little funky, like if the style sheet says one thing and then an inline block says another thing, for example. So that may be where the discrepancy is. But we can take a look into that after the fact if you want. We can see if we can troubleshoot what's going on. But yeah, oftentimes when I run into styling issues like that and say, hey, it's showing up in one font here or another font there, sometimes it can get into like the actual like hierarchy of the style sheet and how that's showing up can sometimes affect that. So. Question?
Yeah, is there any, so browser stack is something we use to be able to test on different platforms,
Mhm.
devices, et cetera. Is there something similar for, testing emails on different mail clients?
Yes, you could use a service like Email on Acid or Litmus to do something like that. We don't have that built natively within Klaviyo, though. Yeah, Email on Acid is one, Litmus is another, and that just allows you to test. The question was, how can I test across different browsers and things like that? So there are services out there where you can say, I want to preview this email, and you can send it to a specific email, and then you'd be able to view that and see how it's going to show up on Android, iOS, desktop, mobile, so on and so forth. You can kind of test all the different ways someone would be able to see that email. Other questions?
That's a great place to look at email templates, whoever's on the back end of that, right?
Yeah, I suppose. I suppose, yeah. Cool. Question?
Really small thing. Is it possible to delete saved blocks?
Yes, it is. So you can do that. That actually shows up in the email template section. So if we go back out to this main page here and we come to view saved blocks, that's where you can go ahead and delete those. Any other questions on the template editor? Sure.
Is there an easy way to put 2 images next to one another?
Yep. So the question was, is there an easy way to put 2 images next to each other? You can do that in a couple different ways. You could do what we call a split block here. So that would be dragging in, and then you can choose the different column types, for example. So I could change the type, and maybe I want this to be image, and I want to change this to image, and then I can put those 2 together. And you can change the padding to make them, be next to each other in a line. You could also use different columns as well. So you could drag columns into the template as well. So maybe you wanted 3 images next to each other, for example. You would be able to do that with a split block, but you could use this button here to add columns to the email, and then you could do that and split it up accordingly. Reactionary question?
Yeah,
Okay.
I was thinking about the text overlay on the image.
Yep.
Could you play with the HTML at all with the Z index and the margins to be able to overlay on top of each other?
You probably could. It could get a little bit dicey and complicated. And the tough part with that is then how does it render on different browsers and stuff, right? It might render fine Gmail on Chrome, but it might not Gmail on PC, right? So it gets a little bit. Yeah, it's a little. Yeah. Yeah, I was doing some stuff with fonts the other day, and it was rendering great on Gmail on Chrome, and I was like, yes, I got this. And then I tried it on PC, and it was just didn't work. And I was like, why is this happening? So yeah, it can get tricky across the browsers and the templates if you're doing that. So cool. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, if there's no other questions, really appreciate your time here today. We really appreciate feedback. This is our first conference here in Boston and doing this with Klaviyo. So any feedback we can get on this session, how we can make this improved, drop into Guidebook, leave some notes, some comments. We have about 7 or 8 minutes left here. We'll be around if anyone has specific questions. But really appreciate your time, and thanks so much for being here today.